time. Let me introduce our speakers for our first project, which you see we'll call it several names, the Ocracoke Express Passenger Ferry or the Hatteras to Ocracoke High-Speed Ferry. You'll hear those things probably used interchangeably. Our two speakers today for this will be Jed Dixon and Will Letchworth. First, Jed Dixon is the Deputy Director of the NC Ferry Division. He's a Dare County native and currently lives with his family in Mania. He's a 1990 graduate of U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and has a Bachelor of Science in Marine Transportation. Jed has extensive experience in shipboard management, marine transportation, fleet operational management, and marine regulatory compliance. He's worked for the NC Ferry Division for 17 years. As Deputy Director, he oversees all operations for the entire division. He's also licensed as a North Carolina general contractor. And after graduation, Mr. Dixon served in the U.S. Navy Reserve for 8 years where he achieved the rank of lieutenant. Next, Will Letchworth is the Carolinas Area Manager for WSP and is a registered professional engineer with over 15 years experience in traffic engineering and transportation planning. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree from NC State, lives in Zebulon with his wife, April, and two daughters, Laney and Ava. With that, I think I'll welcome both of them to the stage.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for that kind introduction. Again, I'm Jed Dixon. I'm the Deputy Director for the North Carolina Ferry Division. It's an honor to be here today to tell you about a cool project that we have here, the Ocracoke Express. And before I start the project, I really wanted to acknowledge our engineering firms who were partners for us in this project. And honestly, this project would not have been possible for, and I'm going to start with Volkert and Entry. They were the companies who started the project and helped us with our feasibility study. WSP did all of our engineering, and RK&K provided project management oversight. So thank you guys for partnership and the great success story that this has become. Wouldn't have been possible without you guys, so thank you for that. I'm going to start with a project overview, system overview. As I don't know if you know this, but North Carolina has the second largest ferry system in the country, only behind Washington State, and we're very proud of that. We have 415 full-time employees. We have 7 routes that span from the northeast North Carolina-Virginia border up in Currituck County, all the way down to the South Carolina-North Carolina border on the Cape Fear River. That's the Southport-Fort Fisher crossing. We have an emergency route that we've used in different times, and we're actually running an emergency operation as we speak due to the aftermath of Hurricane Doreen. That runs out on the Outer Banks. We have, in addition to our ferry fleet, we have a support fleet that consists of 4 tugs and 3 barges, crane barge and a dredge. We use those tools and marine assets that support our ferry operation. They keep our waterways dredged and our terminals in good shape. As I mentioned, we have 7 routes and 13 terminals to support those routes. To keep all this going, we have a state-of-the-art shipyard in Dare County in Mans Harbor, and we have an awesome facility there, and we do all of our scheduled maintenance, and we also do our emergency repairs there. We also have 3 field maintenance shops. They support our operations. We have one in Hatteras, North Carolina. We have one in Craven County that supports our Neuse River crossing. And then we have one in Cedar Island, which is down East Carteret County. Those are our maintenance hubs, and we do all of the work on board at those routes that can't be done at our shipyard. So that's a little overview of the system. Little background on how we got to where we are today, and I think it's important to take a step back and talk about the history here, because we were dealt a problem and we found a unique way of dealing with a problem and an innovative solution to the problem. So I'm gonna step back to 2013 a little bit, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about our history here, and I've got some supporting slides that really will paint a picture of the larger problem that we were dealt by Mother Nature. The red dotted line that you see at the bottom of the screen, that is our historic ferry crossing. And then you can see between Hatteras and Ocracoke Island. dotted line, that crossing at one time was about 35 minutes long, and it was a pretty natural body of water, didn't require a lot of dredging. Well, over time, things have changed, and I've got some slides that really will paint a picture, but the environment started changing, and the inlet started to really have some real erosion problems and started getting very wide. So we had to look at what we could do. The red dotted line, historic route, was no longer feasible, and we couldn't keep it maintained. It's an Army Corps of Engineers, one of their channels that they dredge, and it just wasn't possible to keep it open. So we had to look and see a way around it. So the blue dotted line was the route that we went to after the red dotted line closed off. So we went from a 35-minute crossing to an hour crossing. That's the blue horseshoe route that you see at your screen. What that did was had huge impacts and created some real hardships for the ferry system. In addition to the longer trip, it increased our labor and our fuel costs by about $250,000 a month, and had a huge impact in our ability to be able to provide service there. And because the route was longer, it also created some real congestion problems for us. And when we had at one time we had as many as 50 departures a day. With the new route, we were down to about 36 departures a day. So it really put us some severe congestion problems on the ferry system. And I really want to kind of talk to you a little bit about what happened with the inlet. I think that's really important to kind of figure out the problem so you can understand that, and we talk about a solution. This slide shows the contours of the shoreline. The long area on, I guess it'd be on your right-hand side. That's the tip of Hatteras Island, and then the other side is Ocracoke Island, and in the middle is Hatteras Inlet. And what happened here over the 2002 to 2016 is just amazing. The shoreline that's represented in the green contour was 2002, and then you can see that at that time the inlet was maybe a half-mile wide, and the ferry route that we used to run would go right along the shoreline and cross an inlet that was a half-mile wide. Well, over the course of the next 14 years, you can see the different color contours. It's hard for me to actually see the year, but the yellow, I believe, is 2006, and the purple, 2012, and am I getting the years right? I can't see the years, but it ends with the red being 2016 is where we were. So we went from a half-mile inlet wide to about a 2.5-mile inlet. So we lost almost 2 miles of shoreline on the tip of Hatteras Island. So we went from having to cross a narrow inlet that was fairly deep to a wide, very shallow inlet. And that was the reason we had to run the horseshoe route across that. So a little bit of background on the inlet itself. And this slide really paints a picture. And this is a time-lapse video that shows the inlet and in its state and around the early 1990s, and just look at it take off, and you can see to where we are today. So from 1984 is the first clip, go to 2016, and you can see the problem. You can see the sand in the inlet, and that was the area we used to cross. So we went from an area where we had a natural deep body of water to an area that was completely blocked off. And as I mentioned, it had real huge impacts in our ferry system and created a lot of hardships for Ocracoke Island, which is the island that's primarily supported by this ferry system here. So I'll let it run 1 or 2 more times so you can take a look at it. And this is a hydrographic survey. It's really showing the same thing. And I want to just kind of talk through it a little bit. As I mentioned, at the bottom of the screen was our historic ferry route. It was about a 4.3-mile crossing. And as I mentioned earlier, the Army Corps of Engineers, this is one of their projects, and it's fairly maintained by them. So when it got to a point where the inlet had gotten real wide, it just couldn't be dredged. It was, as soon as the dredge was there, the sand would fill in right behind it. So we were forced to go to a different route, and we did that in 2013. We went from 52 departures a day, as I mentioned earlier, to about 36 departures a day. And we went from a 35-minute crossing to an hour crossing. And in addition to that, our cost of operations went up about $250,000 a month, about $1.3 million for the entire year. And it really created some hardships. I think it had huge impacts on the economy of Ocracoke because of the lack of the ability to be able to move people from one side to the other, and they totally count on the ferry system for their tourism. So once we started seeing these congestions, it just had a snowball effect on the economy locally there. So what we did, we looked at this problem, and we started talking about some different solutions, and we engaged Volker and Entry, and they helped us perform a feasibility study. And what that did was really, it looked at some different options for us and what could be done to really combat this problem with Mother Nature. And those 5 options that were looked at would be to return to the original route and to try to dredge it and maintain that. So the study did look at that. To increase departures on the longer route and to encourage more walk-on traffic. The only problem with that, with the route we ran before, is it's 13 miles from where the ferry landing was to the village center. So there's nothing but NC-12 and beautiful beaches and 13 miles to walk or bike to get there. So it really wasn't one of the feasible options. And then we looked at the passenger ferry that could go into South Dock, our terminal there. And then is actually the solution, or the option that we chose was a passenger ferry that goes all the way into Silver Lake Harbor. And I've got another slide that will better explain geographically where all this is, so you'll understand. It also recommended, the recommendation was the service that goes from Hatteras into Silver Lake. And those of you who've been to Ocracoke realize that Silver Lake is the whole village is built around Silver Lake. It's a beautiful harbor and a quaint little town. And all this was being done before Doreen, and they're going through some real hardships now trying to get everything back in order. But Ocracoke Village is a very charming little town, and it's a very tourism engine for Hyde County and all of the Outer Banks. So let's go on to the next slide here. This slide shows the new passenger ferry route. That's the green dotted line, and you can see, and I think it's important to understand this, the passenger ferry really bypassed the whole inlet system. The blue dotted line shows where our car route is going now, but the green dotted line is where the passenger ferry ran, and it bypassed the entire inlet system, and it goes out into the deep waters of the Pamlico Sound. And because of the speed of the high-speed service with the passenger ferry, we took a 25-mile trip, and we could do it in about 70 minutes. So, and that was very appealing for many reasons. The car ferry line is based on first come, first serve. So, as I mentioned, we have less departures because of the conditions that are going on with the inlet, and have longer waits. So this new route provided a direct service from Hatteras right into Silver Lake Village. So that was a real appealing for someone on vacation. They could really plan their trip out. They wouldn't have to wait in line. They could book a departure and book a return the same day, and didn't have to, you could skip the lines, which was huge for people on vacation. So that was the green dotted line is a passenger ferry route, and you can see it goes right into Ocracoke Harbor there. I'm going to talk a little bit, and then Will Letchworth with WSP is going to pick it up here and talk about the engineering to make this service and put it in place. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we did to get to where we are today. And a very important part of this project is building strong relationships. As Ms. White mentioned earlier, I think that DOT wants to build projects that the citizens want, and I think that's something to keep in mind. So we thought it'd be very important to look at and develop a strong stakeholder group, and we did that. And I think we met several times. Getting the buy-in from the citizens is a really important part, and I think it's not to be overlooked. So we had representatives from NCDOT, from the National Park Service, from Hyde County, and from the businesses of Ocracoke, and also the North Carolina legislature. We're all integral partners in our stakeholder group, and they really shaped and formed this project, and really had a voice into the final say-so. And when we rolled the project out, they were very much owned it, and it was part of their desires from this stakeholder group. A couple interesting things: we were able to put some funding sources together to make this project work. The total project cost was around $9 million, and about half of that money, about a little over $4 million, was funded through a grant from the Federal Lands Access Program. Ocracoke Island is about 90% owned by the federal government. It's part of the Cape Hatteras National Seashore, so we were able to secure a federal grant through the Federal Lands Access Program that helped pay for the capital part of this project, and so the remaining $4.5 million was funded from a one-time appropriation from the General Assembly. So that's the different funding sources that went together to make this project. We started with the design of the vessel and the landside and waterside elements, and Will's going to talk to you a little bit about that and how we were able to work within our footprint at our terminals and really pull all this together. We also, in the Integrated Mobility Division, work closely with Hyde County, and this is really what makes the project a cool project, is the tram portion of this. I tell people when I do these presentations that there's a waterside portion of the project and there's a landside portion, and they both need each other to work. Well, the Integrated Mobility Division worked closely with Hyde County, and we were able to secure some funding for the trams. And the trams are an integral part of this project. So the passenger ferry would deliver people to Ocracoke in Silver Lake Harbor, and the trams would move them throughout the village and really help with day tripping and able to get around the village. You wouldn't need a car to be able to do that. So the historic Bike and Pet Division, the Integrated Mobility Division now really partnered with Hyde County and assisted them on that. We began to promote the service spring of this past year, and through our stakeholder groups and through local media, social media, and standard promotional rack cards that we did. We really worked on getting the word out about the service, and we were still experiencing some hardships with our construction. So the ferry wasn't ready, so we had to look at other options, and we were able to find another vessel that really fit our needs and worked within the footprint we had, and we were able to make a lease agreement with C Street Marine. They operate a high-speed service up in New York City, and we brought their vessel down, and we partnered with them, and we were able to sign an agreement with them to start the service for us for this year, and we have an option for this coming year. But the vessel performed great, and we started working with them to launch the service in May 20th, 2019, and really great success in that. And Will's going to pick it up here and talk a little bit about the implementation of the project. So I want to thank Will again for the great work WSP did and all of the engineering companies. You guys made this possible, so thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Don't go too far. I'm sure they're going to need you for some questions that I won't be able to answer. But you've heard Jed mention several times partnerships, and that has been one of the things that has impressed me the most in working with the Ferry Division, is the strength of partnerships that they have with counties, the National Park Service, the division, because as I talk you through some of the things that we did at some of these terminals, for example, terminals are located on National Park Service lands. So they had to have a strong partnership and strong agreement with the Park Service to be able to make some of this happen. National Park Service actually did the environmental document for this project because they saw so much value in meeting their mission of getting people to Ocracoke, but also doing it in an environmentally conscious manner, which the passenger ferry does by taking cars off the road. Hyde County was obviously a huge partner in this in terms of running the tram service, helping plan where the tram service would go. Dare County's not up here, but Dare County, the Hatteras terminal is located in Dare, so they had strong partnerships and helping getting permits and pushing the terminal construction through the permitting process. Division 1 handles a lot of the roads, the signage. So without all of these strong relationships and partnerships, this project would have never happened, and particularly happened in the time frame in which it did. So by the time the feasibility study was done at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, once the Ferry Division got all the ducks in a row, started pushing the project forward, this service was open in a little over 3 years, and everybody in this room is in the transportation business. You understand that is light speed in terms of delivering a transportation project. So that's one of the things also I love about the Ferry Division. They put their mind to something that's going to happen, and it happened here, and really came to the rescue of the people of Ocracoke, because if you look at any of the economic data, what they were losing because of people having, traditionally taking a day trip to Ocracoke, but now showing up having to wait 2 hours in line to get on a ferry to get over there, and then 2 hours in line on the ferry to get back. It just really wasn't feasible anymore to do a day trip. So their income on Ocracoke was severely limited because of this, and this passenger ferry has gone a long way in helping that. So I've got a few minutes left here, so I want to talk you through a couple of the elements. This is the Hatteras Ferry Terminal, and I'll try to use this fancy electronic laser pointer here, but to give you an idea of where some of these elements are situated. So this is the new passenger ferry terminal. A lot of challenges with siting this terminal. Obviously, we wanted to be adjacent to the existing terminal to be able to take advantage of utilities, proximity to where ticket sales happen. But all of this is happening in a very congested and really vehicle-focused environment. So we spent a lot of time understanding where this terminal needed to go and how to interconnect it with the existing terminal, existing parking lot that was now going to be much more heavily utilized because people were parking and leaving their cars and going over to Ocracoke. And then we constructed a new parking lot here in this location to also assist with handling vehicles of passengers that were going over to Ocracoke. A new floating dock was constructed right here. We rearranged some dolphins. And this was a big challenge from the standpoint of this basin in this picture is empty now, but this is routinely fairly full of very heavy, big vehicle ferries, which are very different than a lightweight aluminum hull passenger ferry vessel. You do not want the two coming in contact with each other. So it did think very carefully about ingress and egress from the ferry operator standpoint, how they would dock at this floating dock, and also to set this up for potential future passenger ferry service with an additional vessel. So constructed the new floating dock and gangway, new dolphins, about a 1,500 square foot passenger ferry shelter, and some additional parking, as well as additional utilities. So all the utilities to serve the passenger ferry are located on the Hatteras side. So water, sewer offload, and electrical connections as well. So this is a picture from inside the terminal. We engaged services of JKF Architecture to help design the passenger shelter itself. Includes some wayfinding elements, a large new pad for people to gather, and then the aluminum gangway that takes you out to the floating dock to get on the passenger ferry. This is a shot of the Ocracoke side. So again, this is totally located on National Park Service land. So this is where that partnership really came into play. The passenger ferry terminal was constructed here immediately adjacent to their visitor center, gift shop, and where you buy off-road vehicle permits for those of you who like to go down to the Outer Lakes and drive on the beach. We also included new restrooms here because that was a big thing that the community said, is that we need more restrooms on the island. We need more facilities for people to come, particularly if they're coming over and they don't have their car with them. They can't just drive up to a shop and stop and get out. So new restroom facilities there, a pull-off for the tram, and then the floating dock. And if you notice these two docks coming off, those were the existing National Park Service day-use docks. So you could go take your private vessel there, dock, pay a small fee. And that was one area where the National Park Service was so accommodating, because that's a busy little area right there, and a lot of day-use vessels, and we essentially eliminated, particularly with one passenger ferry, one side of this dock, but they saw such value in the passenger ferry that they knew that even though they would be giving up some space for their day-use facilities, they would be gaining so much more by taking vehicles off the road and allowing the use of the passenger ferry. And then this is where the existing Sound Class ferries come into the Silver Lake Terminal. Ocracoke Village is just to the right side of the picture here. You can very easily get off. We did some sidewalk improvements in this area to get off the gangway and walk right into town, or go up to the terminal and wait for the tram to come around. And this is a picture of the new terminal there on Ocracoke. So in 2019, the passenger ferry launched. It had nearly 300 riders on the first day. As Jed mentioned, that vessel is leased from C Street Marine. There's 3 departures from each side each day between essentially Memorial and Labor Day. Obviously the free tram that we've talked about. And the Ferry Division did a very, very good job of tracking not only their ridership, but they had an excellent survey that I'll show you some data from here in a little bit, to continuously monitor over the course of the season people's feedback and their thoughts on their passenger ferry experience, and made several changes over the course of the season, particularly with the schedule, to better meet the demand that they were seeing and some of the feedback they were getting. And there are also concessions available on the vessel. And then of course the shuttle service is such an integral part of this, because it allows people to come over there not without a car and to travel around and get to all of the businesses on the island. It's operated by Hyde County through a contract with a provider. The NCDOT provided some funds for the purchase of the trams. The red light's blinking now, so I'll hurry up. And can carry 23 people in the motorized portion and 16 people in the trailer. Very heavily utilized over the course of the year. And it was funny, when we were going through the planning process, you had businesses saying, I don't know that I want to stop in front of my business. I don't want these people all getting out and walking. And then after it was implemented, people were saying, hey, can you put a stop in front of my business? So, that's how these things go sometimes. But amazingly integral part of this. I don't think the passenger ferry would have been as successful as it was without the tram service. So just a couple of facts from the operations, so I can make the light stop blinking. So the 2019 season, we had about 28,600 passengers. That's one-way passengers between Hatteras and Ocracoke. $6 round trip. As Secretary White mentioned this morning, they did escalate that. Started off free, then $1, and then moved up to $6. You can see the 3 departures there, and also some of the revenue from the concession sales. But another amazing piece of this was just how many people showed up with bikes. There are bike racks located on the front of the ferry. You can pull up to the terminal, load your bike on the ferry, and then travel over to Ocracoke and ride around. Just a few key data points from the year of operation. Obviously, traffic continued to build throughout the year, sort of peaking in the late June, early July time frame. And then with average daily ridership of about 77 people on that early run over to Ocracoke, dropping down to 42 in the middle of the day run, and then of course the return trip from Ocracoke. One of the things that the Ferry Division did was push that departure from Ocracoke back a little bit, so you could actually get over there, do dinner, then have a sunset cruise back, which people really, really wanted. And then of course the day of the week popularity, as we expected. You see most of your ridership during the week. The reason Saturday and Sunday's low is because those are the turnover or changeover days at the rental houses on Hatteras. So, people come in, they check into their house, they spend a day or two at the beach there where their house is, and then, come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's when they get antsy and itchy, and your family's getting on your nerves, and you gotta get out there. So, that's why you see that pattern. That's never happened. So how did people rank the service? Well, 99% of the riders said their experience was either excellent or good. And I think that's pretty phenomenal and really a testament to the Ferry Division staff and then the C Street staff that were operating the vessel. 91% were very likely to recommend it to somebody. 98%, very likely or likely. The interesting thing, 75% of people said that the fare is about right, but 24% said it was too low. So that's always good to see when not quite charging as much as you possibly could, so that bodes well for revenue in the future. One of the really interesting things, so when we did the original feasibility study, we were looking at occupancy rates of vehicles that were coming up to the vehicle ferry. And they were in about the 3 people, 3.5 people, I don't know how you get a half person, but per car on the vehicle ferry. A lot more people per vehicle come up around the passenger ferry. So they're planning their trips, they're carpooling, which actually put less demand on the parking system than we anticipated. Obviously, most of the people are visitors, and most of them, I would say even probably that 14% in the vacation category there is probably day trippers as well. So most people are going as we anticipated, getting on the passenger ferry, riding over for the day and coming back. Just a little bit of ridership statistics, so you can see in comparison to the vehicle ferry. The vehicle ferry is continuing to carry the bulk of the passengers over to Ocracoke. I do think we'll see that percentage as time goes along and more people are aware of the passenger ferry. You'll see that go up, the percentage of people utilizing the passenger ferry. But one important thing to note, because of these changes and because of the congestion, the ridership on the vehicle ferry has been steadily decreasing, even though we're in good economic times. This was really the first year that in a long time, that the vehicle ferry passenger ridership actually increased, and then of course the passenger ferry ridership only added on top of that. So providing a lot of benefits to the community there and to the travelers in North Carolina. So with that, I've got a question slide, a couple more pictures here, but Tim, I'm going to take questions. So, thank y'all very much.
Aviation planner and project manager with BHB. She has pretty much been focused on environmental and sustainability planning for airports most of her career. She has airports, I would say, kind of running through her veins. She is a AAA certified member, a private pilot, and both an Envision and a LEED accredited professional. And she's going to walk us through some cool things that airports are doing around the country to track some metrics with sustainable elements. Sierra?
All right. Thank you. I'm a little shorter here, so I adjust. So like she said, I'm going to talk today about a tool that BHB has developed kind of as an outcome of some of the sustainability projects that we've been working on at airports and for municipalities around the country. I've been focused on this tool on the airport side, so I'm going to kind of walk through that tool, kind of how we got there, and then show some examples of what it looks like. So I think most of you know BHB from this conference. Our services have really been about transportation, and aviation kind of falls underneath that element, as well as our environmental side. And BHB started its aviation practice as under environmental, focusing on sustainability and environmental permitting. We really work at airports all over the country. While our offices are up and down the East Coast, we do work all over the country at as many airports as we can. I'm down in Florida, so I work on a lot of sustainability projects at airports in Florida, such as Orlando International Airport, Lee County Port Authority down in Fort Myers, and then a couple others as well. We work at airports from large commercial service airports to small general aviation airports. And while our aviation group is relatively small, we bring in professionals from all different departments at BHB to help us on our aviation work. So we bring in a lot of transportation professionals to help us when we have roadway work, the roads going into the airport, curbside planning, those types of things. But one of the things that we've really been focused on lately is applied technology and integration. And this tool is one of the elements that we have been working on over the past several years that we found as just kind of a need based on our sustainability management plans that we've been developing. So I kind of talked about, but our aviation practice as a whole, it covers a lot of different areas. I've been focused on environmental and sustainability mostly, those last two bullets. But kind of how we've got to this tool was, we've been working in aviation and sustainability for a while, and we kind of have a pretty standard approach as to how we approach sustainability. We use the Airport Council International, their version of the sustainability triangle, and I don't know if you all have heard of this. Usually it's referred to as a three-legged stool, looking at economic viability, natural resources, and social responsibility. But one of the big pieces that we look at now for airports is operational efficiency, because that's really why they are there. They are intended to be as efficient as possible, so we add that into the mix. And when we do these sustainability plans, we really focus on setting goals and objectives, conducting a baseline assessment, setting your baseline year, and comparing how you've been doing over time based on your goals and objectives. We prioritize actions and identify sustainability initiatives, and then we implement and track that performance. And out of this, we've developed a lot of sustainability plans over the years, and we really wanted to find a programmatic approach to sustainability management, looking at continuous improvement. How can we provide something that's more than just a single sustainability document, but really hand something over to the airport that they can use, rather than having a document that just says, these are the sustainability initiatives we're going to achieve. How are we going to do that? So that's where we came up with this tool. We actually call it SPOT, and that's our SPOT dog. He's our mascot for this tool. It stands for Sustainability Planning Optimization Tool. So it's really a process that goes through. It started as an Excel file that we had, and it was macros, a lot of drop downs. It got very complicated, and we said, a lot of places are using dashboards, and a lot of agencies want to use dashboards and software programs. We can do that. We can develop that. So we transformed it into a software application that really is intended to be a one-stop shop. It's very flexible in terms of if the airport only wants a piece of it, we can give them only a portion of it, or if they want the entire SPOT tool, we can give it to them. We can change priorities, evaluation criteria at any time in the process, and it not only helps airports articulate their priorities to leadership and to the community, but it's helped us internally keep track of what we're doing and be able to help the airport articulate their priorities. So it goes through 3 levels, really. Planning, where we look at collecting the baseline data, inputting the baseline data, and then evaluating and prioritizing strategies and their projects. And then we go into implementation, looking at who's responsible for that initiative, when will it get done, what's the description, what are we trying to accomplish, and really how are we going to do that. And then after that, probably the most important piece is tracking your performance, because you can set goals and objectives all you want, but if you don't know how you're doing, you can't adjust. So we have a mechanism in here where you can set the implementation status. Is it in progress? Is it completed? The percentage complete? Those types of things. And then we have metrics as well that we can put in. But it's really what we're trying to do, and what we're working on doing now with this tool, is to create, have it be updated in real time. So some of the things you'll see, and I'm going to show some examples of what the tool looks like, but where we can have it connected directly to your energy meters, and it can update it in real time, so you can go into the tool and see exactly how much energy you've been using over the last month, over the last quarter, over the last year. So I have some screenshots of what the tool looks like. This is a demo piece, so you'll see a lot of TBDs and a lot of fake words. But this is the home page, and it's really just an overview of your goals, your goal categories, how many initiatives you have under each, how many are completed, how many are in process. It's really just to give you a quick snapshot of where you are in the implementation process. And keep in mind, as we go through these slides, it really can be adjusted to anything that you need. An airport may only want the planning piece, or maybe they already have something that they are using to track and they don't really want to change it because if it ain't fixed, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So they may not need that piece. And a lot of airports that we found really only need the last part of this tool, the dashboard piece. And I'll show some examples of what that looks like as well. But this can be adjusted. You can have as many goal categories as you want, as many objectives as you want. We try to recommend to airports to limit their sustainability goals and not have too many. But you can show as many as you want. If you want to show, rather than show initiatives, you want to show something else on the screen, you can absolutely do that. The planning page is really a list of all of your initiatives, and usually you'll have, 4 or 5 goal categories. You'll have some objectives underneath those, and then you'll have a laundry list of initiatives. And this planning tool is really intended to help you prioritize your initiatives. It can be a little overwhelming to look at a long list of initiatives. So we came up with this process with evaluation criteria and scoring. So we will establish a set of evaluation criteria, and we have a standard list that we recommend to airports, but it's really based on their priorities and what they find important in their criteria. So those are things that can look at, time frame, feasibility, the cost of it. Is it meeting the airport's overall mission? Is it meeting any of their sustainability goals? Is it meeting one sustainability goal or all of the sustainability goals? So we can set that based on what's important to the airport and what their requirements are from their leadership. So this shows, this one, for example, shows the number of goals that have been met, the evaluation criteria, and then the scoring. And we'll score things really from a 1 to 3 or a 1 to 5 kind of a score. And we try to limit it down to 1 to 3. So is it meeting it? No. Kind of meeting it. It's absolutely meeting this criteria. And based on your scoring, it'll help you prioritize your initiatives and show you, based on how you ranked things, what you should accomplish first, and what things will be easy to knock out. We want to try to help airports understand that you can have a long list of initiatives, but sometimes not all of them are easy to accomplish, and we want to help identify and so that they can show their leadership and say, look, we went through this process, we want to accomplish these 5 or these 10 items first this year, and then next year we'll accomplish this next set of initiatives. So it's really just to help them articulate what is important to them rather than just reading a list of initiatives off to their leadership. So this is where you'll see some of the funky words, but looking at some goal alignment. The sustainability program, does it align with the sustainability program at all? Sometimes if it doesn't align with that sustainability program, we don't even want to consider it. But sometimes it's important, but may not be related to the sustainability side. These can all be adjusted based on what the airport is looking for. For example, availability of funding is usually a big one. Staffing is usually a big one. Is this a capital project, or is this something that can just be written off easily? And then the effects, we look at, are there effects to greenhouse gas emissions? Are there effects to energy consumption? Is it gonna use a lot of water? There's many factors that we can look at here. The implementation piece, after we've set all of those initiatives, now we can see, okay, this is where the time frame is, this is how we're going to implement it moving forward. We can set the status of it. A lot of times we'll have a list of initiatives and it'll say, we're already working on these, and that's great. We can say those are in progress, they're 50% complete. Let's move on to these other ones. But we can show how many total have been completed and the number of initiatives that there are, and just kind of a quick snapshot. these are things that they can pull screenshots from or export it and bring to their leadership or their board or their city council or whoever that may be. So this is just a snapshot of what it looks like when you go to input this information. You can input you can describe the initiative, you can identify who is going to do it, the time frame. Sometimes it's more important for airports if something takes long-term maybe 5 years, long-term maybe 10 years. It just depends on how they look at things. And then the date that it was completed or the anticipated date of completion. And if there's any reporting requirements, sometimes an initiative may be related to a regulation or something of that nature where there are specific requirements that go along with it. So I have a couple of examples of dashboards. These are actual airports. I'm not saying which airports they are, but we can see that they are, this is an example of energy use. And this was from a little while ago. It's not, this screenshot is not up to date for them, but we can see that it shows what was important to them was kilowatt hours, tracking that, and looking at it per passenger, because the more passengers that you have, the more energy use you're going to have. So that's kind of how we relate it. They also wanted to track the cost of their energy use. We wanted to look at what was the latest and most recent data that was put into this tool. And we did a month-to-month comparison, so July of this year to July of last year, so we could really see how things have changed. And with a lot of airports, if they're growing, it's going to change because there have more passengers that are going through their terminals. This airport is looking at water consumption. So we looked at potable and reclaimed water, annual rate of change. They wanted to track things like a 1-year rolling average of their consumption. And they wanted to break it out as potable water and reclaimed water. So that was important to them to differentiate their water usage. We can track other things, more than just energy and water. We track recycling and waste, how much is going to landfill, how much is getting recycled. If you have a compost program, we can track that. Noise is another big one for airports. So a lot of them have a noise management system that we will try to integrate into this tool. And then we can track things such as air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, those types of things. We can also tie this into if there is a dashboard or an element that the city has or the county has, we can tie it into that so it can be shown to the community. These dashboards have been really helpful for airports to show, like I said, their board of directors or their city council or whoever their leadership team is. But it's also been really important to pull this and show it to the community, because one of the things that we find in these sustainability projects is that airports are not necessarily looked at as a positive thing in the community. A lot of the communities look at this as it's just creating noise and it's just a pollutant. It's just a problem. But we can show that we are doing things at the airport to really benefit the community. And look, we're saving energy and we're saving water, and we're not producing. We can show trend lines. You know, our air quality, our greenhouse gas emissions are decreasing over the years. So it's really important to show not only people at the airport what you're doing, but the community too. And I think we found value in that and showing the community what these airports have really been doing. So some airports that have used this before, the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority down in Orlando, we've been developing a dashboard for them, just simply the dashboard component for right now. And then Massport is just up north here in Massachusetts, but we have been working on creating an Excel file for them, and now we're transitioning it into the software piece. They were one of the first folks that we did this for, and now we're transitioning to the actual applied technology side. Los Angeles World Airports over develop a dashboard. And then Salt Lake City International Airport, that's one where we were actually able to tie it into the city's dashboard so that it was, they were communicating with each other. And then Lee County Port Authority in Fort Myers, Florida, that one we're just kicking off, and that one will actually be the full integration of the entire spot tool. So from the very beginning, the planning process, all the way to the dashboard. So with that said, I'll leave some time for questions for us. But thank you.